Good morning. Welcome, everyone. I'm Councillor Susie Horton. I'm the Chair of the Planning Committee. Before we start this meeting, I'll just go through some housekeeping and safety information. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and the public gallery by the stairwells. Don't use the lifts. And please assemble by Queen Victoria's statue in Guildhall Square. To comply with the Guildhall Trust's fire marshal regulations, if you did sign in at the reception desk, please can you sign out when leaving the building. Just regarding live web streaming, obviously there's public seating available. However, the meeting is also being webcast to allow the public to watch remotely if they wish. And everyone speaking via microphone will be on camera, including those making deputations. The public seating area is not in view of the cameras used to webcast this meeting. Members of the press and public are permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. So please do state if you don't wish to be recorded. When you speak, please can everyone speaking use the microphones and remember to switch them off when you have finished. Okay, and for members, when voting, please can members keep their hands raised clearly until the number of votes have been stated. Okay, so on to introductions. So what we normally do in this meeting is we'll do introductions for people who are taking part in the meeting. That includes those doing deputations as well. So I will start with those doing deputations. So I believe, so yes, thanks for indicating. If you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, good morning. My name's Mark Fitch. I'm Head of Local Authority Housing for Portsmouth City Council.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Patrick Leggett, Head of Capital Projects for Portsmouth City Council.
Excellent. I'll go to the back row.
My name is James Oliver. I'm here as the applicant for 6973 High Street.
Welcome, James.
I'm Oliver Farr. I'm the agent at Apple Court, and I'm doing a deputation for High Street and Montgomery Road. Montgomery Road might not be on your paperwork, but I have registered to speak.
Thank you very much.
David Williams from Willow Design and Architecture. I'm here for 99 Kirby Road.
Welcome.
Jacob Short, Fratton Campaigner.
Welcome, Jacob. Are you giving deputation? No. And you're not giving a deputation. Okay. So I think that's all the people giving deputations. Okay, I will now introduce members of the committee. So I'll start here.
Judith Smythe, St Jude Ward Councillor, Vice Chair of this committee.
Mary Vallely, Stanton for Cosham and Mummering.
Good morning, Chair. Councillor Chris Atwell.
Councillor Chris Dolick, Paulsgrove Ward.
Councillor Derek North, Cosham.
Good morning, Chair. Councillor Matthew Cordy, Member for Hilsey.
Councillor Hugh Mason.
Welcome, members. Last but not least, the other officers in the room. I'll start over here.
Good morning, Chair. David Hodges, Head of Development Management.
Morning, Simon Turner. I'm a team leader in the Planning Department.
Morning, Matthew Garrod, Planning Officer.
Lisa Gallagher, Democratic Services.
Didn't forget you this week.
No, good morning everyone. I'm Juliette Gill. I'm the Principal Planning Solicitor at Portsmouth City Council.
Is there anyone I have forgotten? I don't think so. So welcome everyone to this meeting. So the next item on the agenda is apologies. So I'll go back to Lisa to hear of the apology.
Yes, apologies from Councillor Canlish and Councillor Hunt.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, declarations of interest. Members, do you have any declarations of interest in any of the items on this agenda? No, that's great. So we'll go on to the main agenda. Now, there's a specific request to move item 7 to earlier on for reasons that the... Oh, Lisa, what have I forgotten? Oh, beg your pardon. The minutes were circulated after the main agenda. Did everyone get to see them? And for someone who was here last time, can I approve them? Yes. I can see at least 2 people who were here last time, so 3 people who were here last time. Thanks for reminding me, Lisa. And so those minutes are approved. Now, as I was saying, there's an item on the agenda that can actually be dealt with quickly, and someone's come to do a deputation on it. So rather than sitting through the entire meeting to get to a point where it's probably not going to be discussed, we've decided, hopefully members are in agreement that we can deal with that item first for reasons that will now be explained.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this is item 7, which is 99 Kirby Road. So the application is not actually a planning application, it's an application for a certificate of lawful development. So that is a procedure whereby an applicant can confirm that works that they're going to carry out as permitted development don't need planning permission. It's a useful process to do if you ever sell the property, because if you've carried out the works, you've got evidence that they didn't need planning permission. Despite the fact that determining the application is simply a matter of fact, it either complies with the regs and is permitted development or it isn't. The application was called in for consideration by members. There's no merits to discuss in this particular instance because it's simply a matter of fact whether it complies with the regs or not. Following the application being published on the agenda, you'll see from the SMAT that Councillor Swan has withdrawn their call-in, and therefore that would be the only reason that the application needed to come to the Planning Committee. On that basis, we request the committee's agreement that the application is delegated back to the Assistant Director to be approved under delegated powers, Chair. Thank you.
So Councillor Swan, who called it in, is happy with that. So am I assuming, members, that we are happy to defer that back to planning officers to make that decision? Can we have a vote about that, please? Unanimous, including me. Thank you very much, members. Thank you. You don't have to stay for the whole meeting.
I was just going to say thank you for your time. That was all.
Okay, thanks for coming. Okay, that's a very sensible decision. We've already done one item, so there we go. There is, at the meeting last time, there was a request to have more regular updates about any appeals decisions that are awarded either to the appellant and any costs that are charged against the council as a regular item. So just coincidentally, something came through this week. So David requested if he could bring it to committee, because I think it has some relevance to some of the decisions that we're making. So if it's okay with members, we'll just get that update.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just got a brief presentation to show you. So on Friday of last week, we received the appeal decisions in relation to this application at 36 Chichester Road, which was a change of use from a C3 dwelling house to a 7-bed, 7-person HMO. In terms of, members may recall the property there, mid-terrace property on Chichester Road, and the application turned on the issue of our policies about whether more than 10% of properties within a 50-metre radius of the site are in HMO use. So our assessment as presented as officers was that we were just below 9.3, but nonetheless that complied with policy. Prior to it's worth just going through the events that happened. So just prior to the meeting, Chair, I appreciate this was before your time in the Chair, we received an allegation that there was an additional property within 50 metres of the site that was a HMO, so it was number 52. Notwithstanding this was given to us late, I think a day before the meeting, we'd investigated before the meeting that it was not a HMO, there was no planning for it, there was no licensing for a HMO, there was no evidence from the council tax records of multiple occupation, there was evidence of its sale within the last 10 years, which showed clearly it had been a single dwelling house up to that point, and therefore, even if it had become a HMO, it had been, that would be unlawful, and it had been a HMO for less than 10 years, so the 10% calculation was unaffected. Notwithstanding the advice given at the meeting, the application was deferred for further investigation. So at the subsequent meeting on the 30th of April, officers confirmed the data that had been given verbally at the meeting in the report, and also passed on that we had contacted the owner of the property, and they clarified that the property was not a HMO. And so the evidence, officers reiterated our advice that the 10% calculation was correct, and that the scheme complied with your policies. Notwithstanding that, the application was refused. I've taken the above clip from the minutes, and that gives you the reasons for refusal below. The concern expressed at the meeting of members was about, even if it was HMO, the property, that its use may be akin to a HMO, and therefore that potentially mixed and unbalanced the community concerned, and therefore this was therefore a breach of our policies. So the two reasons for refusal are given as below. The second reason for refusal is a technical one, which is always able to be addressed by production of a suitable agreement, and as we'll see, the applicant did do that in this particular instance. So the key substantive issue was about whether we were over 10% within 50 metres of the property, and whether a particular property was actually HMO. So having gone through the inspector's decision, so in terms of that first reason for refusal, what they've done is they've noted that our guidance and our policies are very specific. So when we're talking about mixed and balanced communities, we're talking about HMOs and not other uses, and it's very specific about in relation to HMOs. So they noted the officer had carried out a detailed investigation and confirmed the point that number 52 was not a HMO, and the owner's own evidence that the property was in Class C3B, so where care was being provided to a single household. And the inspector concluded there was no substantive evidence to contradict this assessment, and no detailed information provided to show why number 52 was actually a HMO. And also they confirmed the point that even if it was a HMO, it could not have accrued that lawful use via the passage of time. And on that basis, there was no justification for including number 52 in the density calculation, and therefore the scheme complied with the council's own policies. Just finding some quotes from the final decision, and these are direct quotes from the decision themselves, and key in this act is about the use of evidence to substantiate a reason for refusal. So if we are going to refuse a planning application, we need to be able to provide the evidence that there is harm and substantiate that harm. In this instance, we didn't have the evidence to support the reason for refusal, given that there was a breach of the 10% policy, and therefore, unsurprisingly, the inspector has allowed the appeal. Quite usefully, although it wasn't actually a reason for refusal, the appellant has also, the inspectors also dealt with the issue of car parking and increased car parking demand that would come from the scheme because it was raised by third parties. And in particular, it deals with this issue about where the parking standards are similar for a large house as a HMO. And I think it's key, that quote, that the parking standard is not significantly greater than the required standard for a large dwelling, and noting that it's unlikely that the proposed use would lead to a material increase in requirement for parking above that of a large family occupying the property. So that's the difference between C3 and a 7-bed HMO. and also noting that it was also a sustainable location with lots of opportunities to travel without use of car, and also that the Highways Authority didn't object. So the appeal was allowed, and also as part of allowing the appeal, the inspector also awarded full costs against council for its unreasonable behaviour. And the key aspects are on the screen there. It's a matter of judgment when dealing with the planning application, but ultimately it's also a case that we need to evidence reasons for refusal and decisions. And as a responsible public body, we should always be able to evidence our decisions. And in this particular instance, the inspector concluded that we had not provided adequate justification for our position in refusing the application, and therefore they also awarded costs against the council. I was asked at the previous meeting to give some data about recent appeal decisions as well. I've gone back as far as when I filled up the slide, so this is actually conveniently the last 18 months worth of appeal data. So these are all decisions made by the Planning Committee in relation to HMO applications. You'll see that with one exception, these have all subsequently been allowed at appeal. The one application that was dismissed was dismissed on a technicality because they did not complete the necessary habitats mitigation, and the inspector dismissed it on that basis, but they did not uphold the substantive reason for refusal given by the committee in relation to, I think in that site was internal living conditions. And you'll see it's on 4 occasions costs have also been awarded. So those decisions were all made contrary to officers' advice, and I'm afraid to report that for the last 18 months, the planning inspector has not supported the committee on its substantive reasons for refusal on any occasion. Just to give you a comparator, these are the decisions which have been made under delegated powers, again related to HMOs. So these are all applications that have been dismissed under officers' delegated authority for HMOs, and you'll see that 5 out of 6 of these have been dismissed, so our decisions have been upheld, and 1 have been allowed. Just to give you some idea of that in context, nationally the planning inspectorate dismisses 70 to 80% of appeals. So if you've got a record of having every 8 out of 10 appeals dismissed, you're on average, or you're well performing as an authority. So, Chair, hopefully there's some useful learning points from that decision, particularly around the need to evidence and sustain and support decisions which the committee makes, and we hope that that's been useful for you in your deliberations today.
Thank you for that update. I want to go back to members and give people an opportunity to say something if they want, although it's not sort of a massive debate. But Councillor Mason.
Could the officer give us some indication of the amount of costs which have been awarded where costs have actually been claimed?
Thanks, Chair. So approximately £1,500 to £2,000 in each case. We don't have a claim yet for the most recent award, and we're waiting on that to come in from the appellant.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Atwell.
Just, obviously, I understand the reason officers have brought this information to us today. It's helpful to understand that. I will continue to consider each application on its own merits, though, going forward. So, whilst that's useful, each application must be considered on its own merits, and I'll continue to do that.
As should we all. Thank you very much for raising that point. Okay, Councillor Smythe.
Can I just, for clarity, say that, just ask the question of, I mean, evidence doesn't include public opinion, does it? Evidence is about things like our standards or our policy being infringed. Is that correct? I mean, the weight of public opinion is not something we can take into account, all other things being equal.
No, so the government's quite clear that the number of applications, the number of objections that you receive to an application is not specifically a factor in whether it should be approved or refused. It needs to be about the planning merits. And also, even if the objection is a singular one, but it's a very emotive one, again, that still needs to be substantiated in planning reasons as to what the harm is if an application is to be refused.
Thank you very much. We have had one or two applications recently where the weight of public opinion was quite threatening and quite difficult to deal with. So that's very reassuring, because I've always believed that that's the case. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Smythe. Any other comments? No, as you're absolutely right, it's a good reminder that we need to be focusing on planning reasons when we have our proposals made about either supporting officers' recommendations or not. And I will carry on being vociferous in that request. Okay, so thank you very much for that update. Now we go on to the first application, item 4 on the agenda, which is the land at Fitzherbert Road. There are no deputations, but we'll go to the presentation from the officers to kick off. Who's doing this one? Oh, yes.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Matthew.
This is an application at Fitzherbert Road for the change of use of land and construction of a centralised car preparation and distribution facility consisting of a car storage facility with valet and offices and a workshop, as well as some changes to the hard and soft landscaping. I will briefly just touch upon the couple of SMAT updates. So following the publication of the committee report, we were waiting on comments back from Coastal Partners to a revised flood risk assessment. Coastal Partners have now come back to us and confirmed that they wish to withdraw their objection, subject to a condition for flood resilience and resistant measures, which is included as part of the update. Additionally, the agent has submitted an additional shadow assessment. I've added it to the slides, so we'll go through that in time. And additionally, the agent has clarified that a further tree beyond that identified in the officer report is required for removal as part of the works. This is T10, which is a holm oak. It's required for removal to facilitate the construction of the workshop. The loss of this tree has been discussed with the council's arboricultural officer, who has commented that the tree is of a low quality specimen, which has previously been reduced, and the loss of this tree is considered to be acceptable, subject to the already proposed replacement planting. I'll go over the tree matters in a bit. So this application relates to land off of Fitzherbert Road, so up in the Drayton and Farlington area, outlined in red on the slide above. Next slide. The application site, it's located on the northern side of Fitzherbert Road to the south of Zetland Road and Zetland Park. It's within an area designated as employment land under PCS 11 of the Portsmouth Plan. So the surrounding area is a mixture of industrial and commercial buildings to the south. You've got Sainsbury's, Booker's and Brewers, I think, to the east, and then Sainsbury's to the south, Booker's and Brewers to the east, and then the existing Richmond Motor Car Showroom located to the west. That's outlined in blue on the location plan, so within the same ownership. To the north, you have Zetland Park, as mentioned, as well as a transition from the industrial area into a more residential setting. So you've got properties off of Zetland and Nutbourne Avenue, which are primarily two-storey, semi-detached or small terraces. And they're located to the north, so they'll be one of the constraints for the site. So here's just some views of the site. So you've got the view from the southeastern corner, from the south, and the southwestern corner along Fitzherbert Road in the screen above. And then on the next slide, you have some views from Zetland Road, so view from the northeastern corner on the bottom left, and then from the northwestern corner on the bottom right. As you can see, there's a substantial existing planted boundary on the northern boundary with the Zetland Road. So they are proposing additional planting along here, as well as some tree removals that are required as part of the works. Here's just some further views of a bird's eye view. So the top one is the view from south from Fitzherbert Road, looking at the site. As you can see, the existing site is primarily used for open car storage. There's 3 smaller industrial buildings on site that are due to be removed. Then you've got the view from the north, so seeing that planted boundary along Zetland Road, and then the surrounding industrial estate further south of the site. Members may recall that a similar scheme was approved by committee in June of last year. At the time, the design and access statement submitted by the agent focused solely on the buildings with limited detail around the use. It was therefore taken that the buildings were going to be ancillary to the existing operations on the adjoining site, so outlined in blue, the car showroom. The use was therefore classified as sui generis. This resulted in a CIL liability exceeding £2 million for the applicant. Following that decision and subsequent discussions with the applicant, Richmond Motors, it became clear that the previous agent had not accurately reflected the intended use of the red outline site. The purpose of this application is to establish the use of the site as a regional hub for deliveries and broader operations of the Richmond Motor Group. So the proposed storage facility will serve satellite dealerships across Hampshire and West Sussex, with vehicles being delivered from the manufacturer, processed on site, and then distributed either directly to customers or other dealerships, and therefore will operate independently from the adjacent dealership with a dedicated office and workshop support these functions. It will increase the quantum of deliveries to and from the site as it becomes more of a regional hub, but the highways have reviewed the updated transport assessment and are satisfied that it won't have any significant impact on the highway network. I'll come back to this matter. So accordingly, the 3 buildings that are proposed are the same massing, scale and overall design as previously approved. While they're under the same ownership as the adjoining car dealership, they will function separately and then are best described as falling within office and industrial use, so B2, B8 and use class E. This reclassification affects the CIL liability, so the proposed uses are exempt under the council's policy in order to support wider economic development in the city. So just returning to the kind of substantive matters of this application. So these are the proposed elevations for the car storage building. So you've got a general kind of steel structure with elements of cladding, so between 4 and 5 stories in height, but the top decks of both are open, so reduces the overall massing. You also don't have it's open to the sides and rear and front, so allows light to spill through and reduces the impact of a 4 or 5 store rebuilding. It also additionally has areas designated for signage of the Richmond Motor Group, which will be fronting along the Fitzherbert Road approach. These are just the floor plans for the storage building. So you've got a small area of valeting, and then you can't see it particularly well on this, but on the ground floor there are a number of spaces near the entrance that are designated to be used by the staff, with the rest of the storage on site for the wider operations of Richmond Motor Group. Go to the next slide. This is the proposed plans for the office building, so outlined in blue on the plan at the bottom. So this will be fronting along to Fitzherbert Road and also provide some screening of the car storage building. So you've got a blue engineering brick at ground floor level with elements of cladding and glazing, as well as some solar panels on the roof proposed. Next slide. These are the proposed floor plans for the office building. So the applicants stated that the proposal will increase employment on the site by approximately 30 employees. So there's currently, I think, 244 employees in the wider red and blue outlined site, with the applicant estimating there's about 14 staff that actually operate in the red-lined area. This will increase to 44. As part of the application, they have provided staff parking for all the additional 30 additional staff parking spaces, either within the storage building or within the revised areas of open car storage on the site. And then this is just the proposed workshop for the building. So a standard industrial building finished in cladding. I'd highlight for the northwest elevation on this and the car storage building, so the two elevations which front onto Zetland Road, they're proposing to colour treat that elevation as a green to hopefully blend in with the planted boundary that you have fronting onto Zetland Road. And then these are just some CGIs from Fitzherbert Road, so you can see the car showroom and then the offices to the front, as well as the areas for signage. And then this is the approach from the other side on Fitzherbert Road. And then you have, in the next slide is, and it's CGI, you can see just there poking through the gap in the trees, the car storage showrooms. This is the image showing it from Nutbourne and Zetland Road, so that junction. If you go to the next slide, so as part of the scheme, they provided a shadow and sun study, so for the 4 key areas of the year. So this is at 3 p.m. and solstice and the equinox, and so in March, June, September and December, so showing the kind of broad range of what the shadow impact of the built form will be on the adjoining neighbours. Reviewing this, there's not considered to be a massive amount of impact in terms of shadow at this period of time, at this kind of day throughout the year. As part of the application, and as will be as in the SMAT update, we requested just a further additional shadow and sun study. So this is what the officers think is probably going to be the most impactful time of year. So this is taken at 10 a.m. on December, in the height of winter in December. As you can see, there will be shadow cast to the neighbours to the north. Officers have reviewed this, and we're comfortable with the level of impact, given that it's similar to what you would expect in a transitional area from an industrial into residential setting, noting that the adjoining site has similar height and shadow cast by the existing storage buildings located to the east. And then, so to go to the trees. So as part of the proposal, 2 cherry trees have been identified as dead and dying and are proposed to be removed. G7, a hazel, T8, a willow, T9, a birch are also to be removed, as well as from the update, T10, a holm oak. As you can see, they're outlined in the top plan, showing the trees outlined in red for removal. Those in green will be retained on site. So it's that cluster of trees closest to the workshop that need to be removed in order to enable its construction. If you go to the next slide, you'll see, so this is just identifying, so on the tree to the left is one of the cherry trees to be removed, and then the image to the right shows the other collection of trees, so G7, T8, T9, and T10, they're due to be removed. So you can see they're not the kind of larger trees that you have along that boundary. They're kind of the smaller, slightly more kind of bundled up together examples. As part of the proposal, they're proposing to plant hedging along that northern boundary, as well as 22 additional trees. So as you can see, the area of tree removal that's proposed, they're proposing to plant in kind of a number of trees to hopefully to mitigate and not create too much of a kind of a change in the overall planted boundary treatment for that section of the northern site. And then, so this is just a show comparison with the previously approved application. So so it's, as you can see, there's minor changes really being to the area of the red line. There's retained as the same buildings in the same scale. It's the use primarily that changes. There's the same planted boundary to the north with an introduction of soft landscaping to the south along Fitzherbert Road. Both schemes, as one of their advantages, is that currently car transporters aren't able to enter the site, so load and unload on the Fitzherbert Road approach and end up causing quite a lot of traffic along Fitzherbert Road. in the previous scheme and with this new proposal, they've retained the ability for car transporters to enter the site in a forward gear and up to 3 transporters to be on site at any one time, loading and unloading, and then to exit the site in a forward gear. So should, in theory, reduce the impact of unloading and unloading on the Fitzherbert Road approach. So while there will be an increase in car transporters because of the change of the site to a central hub, given the fact that they'll be able to load and unload on site, it's considered that the highways officer is satisfied that there won't be a significant impact on the highway network. I believe that is all of the substantive matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew, for that. There are no deputations for this item, so I'll go to members for questions first. So just start with questions. Councillor Mason was first, and then Councillor.
I have 2 questions. The first concerns the car storage facility which is being proposed. What are the materials that will be made out of? It would appear there's quite a lot of metal there, and metal and car tyres do produce a rather nasty noise, and one thinks of the residents of Zetland Road. So what are the materials which are being used, especially for the flooring of that? Question 1. And while you're looking, question 2 concerns the trees. Now I shall restrain my cynicism about the sill. The trees, they're all, which are being removed, are all 5 of them anyway. I have tree preservation orders on them. They're T numbers. I'm glad to see they're being replaced. Are they being replaced by trees which will retain their greenery in winter, as the holm oak, which is being removed, would retain its greenery during the winter period?
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of the material, so it's for the car storage building. It is a steel structure with composite cladding to the lower 1.5 story, essentially. So the rest of the structure is open, so there will be obviously a noise generation from that. As part of the application, the applicant has provided a noise assessment looking at what the likely noise that's already generated at the site from it being used as open car storage, so driving around and parking out, as well as the other operations on site for the valeting in the workshop. That noise assessment's been reviewed by our environmental health team, who have recommended 3 conditions, but are otherwise satisfied that the proposed scheme shouldn't result in a significant impact to the surrounding residential neighbours. In terms of the trees that are being planted, you have 3 field maples, a birch, 8 hawthorns, a beech, holly, 1 oak, and a yew, specifically in terms of that small section that are being removed. So next to the workshop, you have 1 beech tree, 3 birches, 1 oak, and a field maple on that section.
Councillor Smythe.
Could we return to the map, please, the plan of the site? There's a couple of things on the boundary that I don't understand. Can you go back one? Yes. This may not be at all relevant even to the planning application, but I don't understand what those 2 things are on the top, the northern side of the map. There's one with a little shape in it, and the other one looks like there's a whale disappearing under the bits of the site, which of course there can't be. What are those things on there?
Councillor, can you go over again? So what are the 2 elements?
Well, on the left-hand side of the plan, there are 2 shapes which are off-site, north of the blue boundary. One's, yes, that one and the one next to it. What are they?
I believe that is, so that is Zetland Park. So I think those are playground, and I think from memory it's either a basketball hoop with a bit of concrete. So it's outside the application site. But yeah, it's a basketball court and a small playground on Zetland Park.
Is there any reason we should be concerned about so much air pollution from vehicle movements to that play area?
So as part of the application, they've submitted an air quality assessment that looked at, obviously, those matters. The air quality assessment has kind of confirmed that there shouldn't be any significant impact on in air quality in general, including the park and the residential properties to the north.
Have they advised that additional planting or hedging might be advisable?
While Matthew's looking for that, obviously increasing amount of cars will be electric, so you're going to have less air pollution. Prevailing winds are from the southwest, whereas the whatever may come off the site is, if the prevailing winds are in action that day, they would take it away from the playground and so on. I think it's any air pollution issues are more likely to come from the main roads than this particular site.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Do you want to?
Also, just in terms, I've just quickly re-reviewed the air quality report. They haven't suggested any particular concerns. I think similar to as Simon mentioned, there's already kind of the road network around it is probably causing that. So they haven't recommended any condition around mitigation. Obviously, they are planting hedges along the boundary of the site as well as additional planting to hopefully mitigate any impact.
Thank you. We are told that hedges help, so that's good. Thank you.
Go for it.
Thank you, Chair. So the previous application that was approved would have had to have paid £2 million with a sill levy. Am I right in understanding that this new one, should it be approved, would pay no levy at all?
I understand that is the case because it's changed use, but I'll let someone give a more specific planning answer to that.
Yes, that is correct. So previously it was as sui generis. So your sill liability charging schedule sets out kind of specific charging for use classes. It doesn't have one for sui generis, as each of those, as you know, it's a use class of its own. Each one's individual. So as a car showroom, it was if it was considered to be a supporting structures and buildings to the car showroom use, then it would have required full sill charging. Port City Council has obviously adopted for office and industrial uses, which in the officer's view, I think this definitely falls within rather than the car showroom use. That doesn't have any sill liability, obviously to encourage office and industrial uses within the city. So yes, it is kind of a quirk that it does kind of reduce the sill liability, but we're satisfied that this is the actual intended use of the site. It is correctly falling within office and industrial rather than sui generis use. So the initial scheme, without the details around the change of use, was more of an inaccuracy in terms of how they described what they intended to use the site as.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Councillor Gordy. Any question, Councillor Atwell?
I think this is a question. The report doesn't seem to address the probable increase in traffic to the site. It just says there will be an increase. I wonder if there is any way of teasing out whether that's because it's going to be this sort of centralised facility, whether that is that, because there's a big difference between 5% increase in traffic and 100% increase in traffic. Is there any way of teasing that out? Because I can't see it in the report.
Thank you, Councillor. So in terms of traffic, there will of course be 30 additional staff car parking spaces, and so 30 additional staff possibly driving to work or possibly using public transport options. Can't rule that out. In terms of deliveries to the site, at the moment the applicants state that they typically receive 3 deliveries per day for the 6 days a week that they're operating. They envision that once, you know, if approved, they would like the deliveries to the site for the car transporters would increase to 8 a day for the 6 days that they're open. So there would be obviously an increase of 5 transporter deliveries per day. As stated, they will benefit from being able to enter into the site and load and unload off, and then leave without blocking up the roadway as they are currently. So while there will be increased deliveries, it's the highways officers' opinion and myself that it will be won't be negatively impactful, given that they won't be operating deliveries on the public roadway.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Could we go back to the slide that shows the shadowing on the houses to the north, please? Now, I believe it might be the next one, if that's okay. Yeah, so if we look at the bottom section there, the bottom image, it looks as if one of the gardens is completely shadowed out to the north. I was wondering, yeah, just there. So I was wondering if they've been told that this is likely to happen, or is it down to them to look online to find this matter out?
So they've been consulted as part of an application. So we've written to all of the adjoining neighbours as well as they'll be aware of the kind of likely impact of the scheme. And I would highlight, this is obviously just at 10 a.m. morning. The sun will move around as seen in the later slides, and by midday and onwards, it should be a minimal impact.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? I'm just looking at my list. I think mine were covered: trees and the shadowing and the additional deliveries. So, okay, we'll move on to comments and proposals. Councillor Hugh Mason.
I think I share my colleagues' cynicism about Sill. I think that given the efforts which have been made to minimise the impact on the residents of Zetland Road, both by the hedges, by the tree replanting, the types of trees which are being replanted, and the construction of the building, which should not or should minimise the amount of noise pollution which they are facing. I think that this is a suitable development for the site, and so I propose the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Any other comments or recommendations? Councillor North.
I'd just like to second Councillor Mason's proposal, please.
Any other comments or counter proposals from any other members? No. So we have one proposal before us, proposed by Councillor Mason, seconded by Councillor North, to support officers' recommendations. All those in favour? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's all 8. That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you very much, members, for those questions and that discussion. So, officer's recommendation for the land at Fitzherbert Road is granted. Planning permission is granted. Sorry. Okay. Item 5, we'll go straight on to item 5, which is 69 to 73 High Street, Cosham. And we'll start off with the officer's presentation, and if you could include any information from the SMAT, if there is any. I don't think there is. Oh, yes, there is. Thank you. Is it Simon?
Thank you,
Yeah,
Chair.
Simon.
Yes, there is some SMAT matters I'll come to at the end, I hope. I don't forget, and we have a deputation from the applicant, Mr. Oliver, and his agent, Mr. Farr. It's a long development description, 6973 High Street. So if we go to the next slide, it boils it down for you a bit more digestibly. So on the ground floor, there will be 2 commercial units in Class E and a 4-bedroom HMO. The terraces are individual balconies, really. On the first floor will be an 8-bedroom HMO. Second floor, another 8-bedroom HMO. And the third floor, in a new mansard roof built, a 5-bedroom HMO. So 4 HMOs and the ground floor commercial space. Thank you. So the site is on Cosham High Street, more or less halfway along. Magdala Road runs east to west, just to the north, and there's a collection of 4 or 5 houses on the corner of Magdala Road and Dorset Crescent there that back onto the site. That is the area of interest with respect to the effect of the development on their amenities, because they are houses looking backwards onto the site with their small back gardens. Opposite to the rear on the eastern corner of Dorset Crescent and Magdala Road is a nursing home. And then north to south on the high street, you've got the range of commercial premises, a bus stop just outside the site, parking bay opposite, you can see the wider section there. Of course, it's one way from north to south, I think it is. Thank you. There's the actual premises. So a former bank, I believe, that was closed down last year. Tall, 2 stories, so each story is tall, and that has enabled the applicant through complete rebuilding inside to insert an extra floor because there's all that height of the existing building, so they're able to get 3 stories inside that plus the mansard to create the 4th story. Thank you. Before I come on to the HMOs, the other matter of principle is the land use of the commercial use in the local centre. Members may be aware our local policies and the local plan have policies for encouraging retention of commercial uses in the primary centres. This would indeed retain 2 units of slightly different size in the front half of the site. You'll see in the floor plans in a minute, whereas the rear ground floor will be put over to one of the new HMOs. But the important thing is there are 2 units, slightly different size, to provide different opportunities for different commercial operators on the high street. So we'll be bringing back into use positively a building that's currently vacant. So that's supported. In terms of the principle of the HMOs, being in a town centre location, there's a different setup to what we see in 99% of other cases in fully residential areas. So we do have residences to the east or north, principally on Magdala Road there. You can see there's blue dots and 1 or 2 other flats dotted around. But it does produce a different outcome compared to the normal residential street. So it's in the SMAT actually. We just misreported there are 28 residential properties currently. Because this, if approved, would result in 4 new, there would be a total of 32. Of those 32, there would be 4 resulting if approved, so that's 12.5%. So that's a bit above the 10% policy threshold in your supplementary planning document, which is normally rigorously applied in the normal residential circumstances. Members may recall, who were on the last committee nearly a year ago, last autumn, we had a similar scheme up the road at the top end of the northern end of the high street, where I think there were just 3 residential properties in that particular 50-metre zone. So it was 0 out of 3 then. As approved, it became 1 out of 4, 25%. This is slightly different figures, but it's the same sort of scenario. It's not a regular residential setup. So although it go over the 10% threshold, which we usually use as indicative of not having a mixed and balanced community, the introduction of more people onto the high street basically is, in officers' opinion, a good thing. During the day, that's people coming and going out of the front door. I think you'll see in a minute there are back doors as well on the site, but I think most people come out, if they do come out the back, they'd still walk round onto the high street and head north or south to wherever they're going, on foot, on bike, to public transport. So you'll get more footfall on the high street, people going to work, buying a sandwich or whatever, newspaper or something like that. On the way to work, ditto when they come back. And of course at the weekends and the evenings, you can get more people up and down on the high street. So in a nutshell, that is the reason that we feel is supportable, because you're adding to the vitality and viability of the town centre without causing undue stress in terms of a mixed and balanced community. Thank you. Did we skip one there? Yeah. Just the existing floor plans. That's the building, the former bank, and series of rooms and so on. Thank you, David. So the top half is the existing section. The right-hand side is the high street elevation. You can see how tall the internal floor-to-ceiling heights are, which, as I said earlier, enables, through the gutting of the building, the introduction of a new, an extra floor within it. On the left-hand side, you can't read them, but they're around about 2.4 plus floor-to-ceiling heights, complying with building regulations. And then you can see the mansard, which sits at the front half of the site. Thank you. These are quite small, apologies, because it's quite a big building, but we can zoom in if necessary. So on the ground floor, we have the 2 commercial units with their front doors onto the high street, and back of house they've got their own kitchenette, storage area and toilet. On the left-hand side of the frontage, you've got HMO access, which takes you into the building. You've got on the left-hand side, the front door. Yeah, they're through there, that's it. It takes you through there, and you can go upstairs, straight upstairs, and that takes you to the first floor and the second floor and the third floor HMOs. The rear HMO that has 4 yellow room numbers there, 1 to 4, that is only access from the rear of the site on Dorking Crescent, so that has its own separate front door there. There are bin stores at the back and bike stores to the back left, a row of bike stores there. We've got what we hope is the correct boundary treatments and security to provide suitable arrangements there. There is also stairs. If you look on the first floor, the rear, there is a set of stairs. So the HMO on the first and second floors have a choice of doors. They can either come in the back or they can come in the front. In terms of the accommodation offered, on the ground floor, thank you, David. On the ground floor, you can make out the kitchen, diner, communal space in the middle at 27.26. That's in excess of the standard. And then the 4 bedrooms are all very large, way in excess of the standard of 10. They're at 16, 15, 15, 16. So a good standard accommodation there. They've got their own little individual balconies or terraces on the western side there, thank you, for a bit of outdoor space as an extra, not normal for an HMO. Up onto the first floor, the first and the second floor are the same layouts. We've got 8 rooms, 4 on the front with their own individual balconies onto the high street. That frontage will be rebuilt. Number 5, a room at the back looking over the light well, and then a large kitchen diner communal space at 50 odd square metres, and further large bedrooms. The rooms on the front are all to standard in terms of their width. They just look long and narrow because they're large. It gives it that formation or form, but they're actually still meet all the standards in terms of dimensions and much more in terms of overall space. The second floor is the same layout I've just described, broadly speaking, and the third floor is the 5-bedroom HMO with, again, good sized bedrooms, en suites, etc., and a communal space that meets the standard. So in terms of room sizes and configurations and outlook and light, officers are happy that this would be a very good standard of accommodation for the occupiers. I neglected to say why this has come to committee. The number of objections received were 12, setting out a range of matters you've seen in your report. There was a previous application you may have noticed in the officer report from earlier this year, very similar scheme, and I alluded to earlier on, the key issue with this application has been the privacy for the residents at the rear. So thank you. This is looking from Dorking Crescent, so this is the eastern elevation. That top photograph, you can see a sort of side yard area. Some of those buildings in that area will be further removed to open it up, and that's where the bikes would be, and on the front, the bins. And then bottom right, that elevation, you can see the existing windows, and that's where the insertion of new windows would be. And I think on the next slide, we'll see the relationship. No, next one then. Further, I've jumped ahead a little bit here. There we are, thank you, Dave. So that's that same northern elevation. In the first application, those windows were straight on, looking across to the houses nearby that we'll see in a moment. That was a close relationship, too close in our opinion. looking at the Magdala Road properties. So we gave the applicant an opportunity to resolve that. They were unable to with that application, so we refused it on that and a couple of other lesser points. They've come back in and have worked hard to try and resolve that this time. So those, at the ground floor on the bottom image, you can see a shaded wall. That is a very substantial independent wall, so it's not going to fall over when you take away other supporting structures. That is proposed for retention. And as you can see, you can just see the ground floor bedrooms that poke up above it, but they're above head height. So imagine we're looking at it as if we were in the garden of the Magdala Road properties at about 9 metres distance. That wall's retention would prevent that indivisibility at close quarters. Then in terms of the upper windows, these are triangular shaped bays. Rather than having windows previously that look straight across down into the Magdala Road gardens or straight into the back bedroom, what they've done, that's a triangular shaped in form, we'll see. The right-hand side is obscurely glazed. The left-hand side funnels the vision diagonally, so it avoids that. It's a common method of resolving close visibility issues. So that deals or sufficiently mitigates overlooking. It wouldn't remove it altogether, to be candid and honest, but we feel it sufficiently mitigates it in this environment of a close quarters development in a town centre. Thank you, David. If we could go back another one or two, I think probably. Thank you. Yes, okay. So onto the high street. You might recall the 70s frontage of glazing and so on. This would be rebuilt principally in brick, as you can see. So it become a smart, contemporary designed high street development, a bit like the one to the right-hand side, top right, that has planning permission but not yet built. We're happy with the scale. We had an extra objection letter that's in the SMAT concerned about scale. The mansard roof, of course, is recessive in form and slightly set back with a slight rake on it. And there are other developments, for example, in the bottom right-hand corner there, showing some other developments in Cosham High Street of a similar sort of scale. So we're quite happy with the scale and indeed pleased with the bricks and mortar approach and the amenity offered with the balconies on the front. This is, for completeness, the southern elevation at the bottom and the on the right-hand side, the rear elevation facing Dorking Crescent. So you can see the bin storage, pretty smart with bricks and so on. So it's it is back of house area there as it is. So it would smarten up that existing. And then the left-hand side with the porch there, you've got the back door that takes you into the ground floor HMO, and it provides the second door for the upper HMOs. Thank you, David. So we're back here to that relationship. I think we've seen that. Thank you. So that elevation shows you without the intervening wall. That would have been the relationship. And you can see bottom left, that is the solid wall. It's very thick. That's the one that would be retained. Now, also in the SMAT, we have a comment about an extra condition. We're still tying down the complete accuracy of these drawings with respect to retained features and demolished features along this boundary. We're clearly confident that we're able to recommend it to you today, but it's the fine details, if that is at 0.5 metre here and that height and so on, which is why we're recommending a final condition to make sure that we have complete details of what we know we're approving, if that is your decision today. There we are. Now, this is the section through. So we flipped it round, really. Our top right is the Magdala Road properties. So you can see at first floor, they've got windows, probably mostly bedrooms, at relatively close quarters to the proposed accommodation. And the section flips it round, unfortunately. So that's Magdala Road house on the left. You can see the intervening wall at the ground floor that prevents that immediate intervisibility. And then the upper floor windows are angled away. We'll see another diagram in a moment about that. The first floor window at Magdala Road there in the top left would look down into the ground floor bedrooms, but we feel though those rooms are sufficient size that we don't think there would be such a degree of overlooking, and people would make their own minds before they move in. Thank you. Here, this illustrates the the overlooking issue with the windows turned into that funnel shape effectively. So rather than looking straight down at close quarters into a garden or into the rear windows of the Magdalo properties there, 8, 10 and 12, it funnels it sideways because of the obscure glazing on the first half. So that's why I said it wouldn't remove overlooking, but it would mitigate and lessen. We didn't have any objections from the neighbours those neighbours on that point of overlooking. So we feel that on balance that is an acceptable solution. That's just a comprehensive view of the overall site. So there we are, members. I hope I've taken you through reasonably the whole scheme. I'll just check on the if there's anything left on the SMATs. We just have amended some of the plans to pick up on those details. There's been a gate included to the rear areas to make sure that's safe. Yes, I think I've covered in passing all the SMAT matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. There's actually just one deputation. The other one was in the wrong box. So, oh, there's two. Okay. Apologies. I was told that it wasn't. So if there's no objectors, supporters, so the applicant and then the agent. Okay, so James, if you go first, you have 6 minutes.
Chair, members of the committee, we acknowledge that this proposal exceeds your preferred 10% threshold for HMO imbalance. However, as the planning officer has confirmed, there are no HMOs within the 50-metre radius. Some of you may recall a similar case at the top of the high street, a 15-bedroom HMO that created a 33% imbalance. In contrast, we felt it was better to provide 4 high-quality cluster flats within the building rather than one large HMO. This approach provides balance, choice and aligns with the spirit of your policy. This site is particularly well suited for this type of development. The layout of the former NatWest building makes it ideal for conversion, and because it is a commercial property, there is no loss to valuable family stock. Looking at the plans, you will see that the room sizes are generous, creating attractive and comfortable accommodation for future occupiers. Our vision has been simple: to take a large, vacant building in Cosham High Street and make it relevant for 2025 and beyond. Portsmouth North is home to major employers such as Queen Alexandra Hospital, North Harbour Business Park and BAE Systems. These organisations are growing and they need secure, high-quality accommodation for the young professionals they attract. As the officer has shown, our scheme provides exactly that. Modern homes that exceed minimum space standards with an inclusive rental model that offers stability and security at a time when it is most needed. The application represents a £1 million investment into Cosham High Street. The development will be highly insulated, powered by rooftop solar panels and supported by advanced battery technology, making it one of the most energy-efficient schemes within the area. We are also contributing £16,000 towards public transport, with the railway station just 200 metres away, on-site cycle storage and retail outlets on the doorstep. This is a sustainable, well-connected development that complements the wider community.
I'll give you your time back. Please, we can't have comments from the balcony. Thank you. Continue.
Thank you. In short, this proposal will repurpose an empty bank into high-quality homes, bring substantial investment into Cosham High Street, support local businesses and help regenerate the area. We live in challenging times, but schemes like this will help us to adapt, invest and create opportunities for the future. To reassure the committee, and more important, the residents, we are happy if there is a condition restricting the occupation of the building to a type of resident this committee considers appropriate. I respectfully ask you to support this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your deputation. Okay, and Mr. Varr, over to you now.
Thank you. Apologise in advance if I'm repeating anything that James or the planning officer have said. Obviously, I'm here to focus on the positives of the application and hopefully demonstrate that the positives outweigh any perceived harm. So it's not your normal HMO application. As I said, it could have, in theory, been submitted as one large HMO, but I'm pretty sure nobody would have liked to have supported the idea of a 25-person HMO. By dividing the building into smaller units, although small is not the operable word, it makes it easier to manage, easier for licensing to assess, and gives a better quality of living for the residents, including security and access to communal facilities. As well as the residential use, there's also the introduction of 2 shop fronts, replacing a bank which has been closed for some time now. I believe there was once an initiative to encourage living over shops, as it requires less land to be taken and encourages the regeneration of the high street. Along with this, it should be acknowledged that having people living above shops puts eyes on the area at times when people might think nobody's watching. This all ties in with policy PCS 8, which looks to protect the primary frontage and encourage residential uses on upper floors. I'm sure the matter of parking is going to arise, but looking at the other parts of PCS 17, which also encourages development in areas around public transport hubs with good access to services in locations where there's potential for all for walking, cycling and using public transport. This is a stone's throw from the train station and a good bus interchange. And there's the red scooters we see everywhere too. The target market for this development will be professionals who would benefit from quick access to their workplaces, such as QA Hospital and Lakeside. And by promoting a car-free environment, it encourages other modes of transport as well as walking. And in line with policy PCS 23, there is the provision of integral, very secure bike storage. If you're living in this location, you have everything you need on your doorstep, which is a good thing for non-drivers. The Highways Department have also requested the applicant make a contribution towards the upgrading of the public transport network, which is quite an unusual scenario for HMO development. However, this is quite a unique scenario in its own right. Moving on to PCS 20 and the density. As mentioned before, many of you were here just before Christmas last year, and we saw a similar scenario where the density went from 0 to 33% due to the lack of residential properties. Maybe not quite the same, but a comparable example of how the policy can be applied. As I've already mentioned, this is not the normal scenario because the balance of the community is part residential, part commercial, with around half the amount of houses you would see in a more densely populated area. Importantly, the community is not already imbalanced by HMO uses. This development will not result in the loss of family housing, and in fact it will protect the family housing within a 50-metre radius of the site. Approving this today will not undermine the more common application of the policy, as the circumstances are different. No properties will be lost. In fact, 4 properties will be gained. They would just happen to be HMOs. Plus, there's the additional commercial units for the benefit of the community. In line with policy PCS 23, this development will be well designed. At this point, I'd like to acknowledge the planning officers who were involved with this application, who have worked proactively with us to find solutions to any issues. This isn't our first bite at the cherry. The first submission failed on a design point, which we were able to resolve. There have been various tweaks to the project throughout the last few weeks, and the final design that has been jointly agreed upon offers a high-end accommodation with very spacious living standards, large, bright and welcoming for the future tenants. Which probably all seen comments on the website, and we've seen it on social media. It's not a subject I want to engage in, but let me make it clear the applicants are looking to invest significant amounts of money in the development and are producing a high standard of finish to appeal to the professionals that want to live in this type of accommodation. I want to assure those interested that is very much the target market. As I mentioned before, there are nearby employment sites where people are working long hours and need somewhere nice to live without breaking the bank, no pun intended. The planning application alone, when taking into account the application fees, architectural costs, transport contributions, nitrate payments and SIL payments, is a significant amount of money. Combined with the time and cost of the development itself, this is an ambitious long-term investment, and the applicant has identified a site with potential for a good use. There's nothing to be suspicious about. My colleague at Applecore has been asked by councillors and has been approached by the local news also to clarify this matter. So to conclude, this is not the normal scenario for HMOs, and while it may be perceived that it does not follow a particular policy to the letter, it also does not undermine that policy. It just applies it in a different way. Approving this today does not set a precedent, as there is little to compare it to and unlikely to be compared in the future. It's been thoughtfully and excellently designed, and I hope you can see the positives are there. Therefore, I respect that you consider this application with an open mind and vote in favour of the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation, Mr. Farr. Okay, that brings us to the end of the deputations. So we will go over to questions from members. Do members have any questions? Councillor Atwell.
Can officers pick up on the point of whether the type of person living in a accommodation like this can be conditioned?
Thank you, Councillor. No, it's a use class that seeks 3+ individuals living together as a shared household, shared amenities, irrespective of their profession, nationality, anything else.
Thank you for that question. It's really a timely reminder why we're here at the Planning Committee, and we're actually looking at the application and whether it meets national planning regulations. Any other questions? Councillor Mason, and then I'll come to Councillor North.
A couple of questions. This is going to push up the proportion of HMOs in this area considerably. Does this development, if passed, mean that there could be no further development of HMOs within a 50-metre radius of this property? My second question concerns the access to the refuse bins, the bin storage, at the rear of the property. How will this be accessed from on the ground floor, since the ground floor entry my apologies. Since the ground floor entry is at the front of the building.
There we get the floor plans up. Thank you. Yes, please. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. That's a very good question. There is actually a back door, so to speak. So if we come in through the front entrance from the High Street and walk through there, yeah, if you carry on all the way down, David, there's a back door there that takes you out. So yeah, so no, sorry, that's for the commercial. So the ground floor unit would come out the. Is that there's a back door? That's right. Yes. So which unit in particular was it you're asking about, or any of them, Councillor? Sorry.
Basically, the commercial units at the front.
Right. Okay. They've got that first door identified, the back door that takes you down the side. If you can show that again, David, please. No further back. Just to the right of the word ground. That door there.
Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. That's for the commercial, so that's their little exit. If that answers your question, thank you. In terms of the HMO, does it mean no more HMOs can happen in the 50-metre radius? In the same radius, but it wouldn't be the same radius because another property would have a different central point to the radius. So I can't tell you what the mix of HMOs would be there. It would be a different set of properties, so I can't answer that question.
Thank you.
But this surely, if there was a property and this property came within its 50-metre radius, this would preclude the development of an HMO at that point.
Again, it depends. It's quite likely, yes, I'll happy to say that. It's quite likely, it depends exactly, say you move 20 metres to the north, another property there, then that moves the whole radius 20 metres to the north and will start to capture other properties that will increase the number, so I couldn't tell you how the balance would come out. It would clearly affect it.
Good question, though, because presumably if the radius of something else just clipped the corner of the site, then all of these HMOs would be included. Or would it be, I think it's worth teasing out, actually, because, or would it be that it needs to clip the corner of one of the bits of the HMOs that are in here? It's really important.
Thank you. Well, we simply can't answer the question because we don't know which property and where that radius would be. So, if you jumped onto the other side of Magdala Road and decided one of those, that's what, 30 or so metres away to the northeast, the whole radius would shift northeast. So you'd lose the flats to the south at the bottom there, the two blue, and you'd move up and include more. So don't know what the proportion would be, but clearly if it still includes this application site, those four, if approved, would count towards that and have their effect.
I suppose my point is, does this application site come as a job lot, or are these considered to be, because if you look at the plans of this, then each of these HMOs has got a different proximity to the edge of the perimeter. So I don't know whether you can answer this now, because it is quite a unique circumstance, but if there was a radius from another property that clipped the edge of this application's boundary, does that mean that that is 3 HMOs?
I don't have the SPD in front of me, which talks about, it anticipates that sort of question for flatted developments and where you might include them when you're not sure of exact layouts. It depends on front doors. They've got different front doors going on here and so on. So we'd have to cross that bridge when we came to it to work out which of these might be included in another radius centred on another property.
Thank you. Apologies, Councillor Mills. I thought it was worth teasing out. Over to you for your question.
So, it is about parking. You knew it was going to come up. According to PCS 21, what is our required amount of parking spaces given for this HMO application?
Right. As a reminder to the committee, that there's not a requirement, there's an expectation, just first of all, and the document does set out that depends on the merits of each case, of course. So, you know, one site may be more remote from public transport and other facilities, and there you might expect it to have perhaps more parking. Other sites in the city centre or in a local centre like this with excellent public transport, you're not going to have the same expectation. But nevertheless, the expectations, broadly speaking, without any particular site, are 4 spaces per HMO, as you would have for a larger dwelling. So that is what we analyse in this particular location. Now, because of the proximity to excellent public transport, the buses, the train, ability to walk to the hospital if you work there, to all the local centre shops and services, other industrial areas in the north of the city, you can go by bike, walking, bus, etc. That's why officers are quite, along with the sustainable transport contribution, which will further improve local public transport, that's why officers are quite prepared to recommend it positively.
So, if it's 4 per HMO, and this is going through potentially as 4 individuals, does that mean it's 16 spaces?
I'm sorry, I made a mistake there. Thank you, Matthew. Sorry, I was looking at the bike parking. It's 2 spaces per dwelling. So if you wanted to apply the expectation to this particular site, it would be 8. Yeah, apologies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Smythe got in just before you, Councillor Atwell, and then I'll come to you. Any more questions, Councillor Atwell?
I've got a question about the public transport contribution and how that works. So just any information you can tell me, because I think it's quite an unusual thing for somebody to say, I'll chuck in a bit of money to enhance public transport.
Thank you, Councillor. There are no hard and fast thresholds at which we say, right, it's got more than this amount of floor space or dwellings or HMO bedrooms. There's no fixed amount. So the Transportation Department will look at each case on its own merits. Not surprisingly, very large developments like Summers Orchard, which the committee saw last year for 566 dwellings, that had its own particular contribution to sustainable transport measures and pedestrian safety and so on, to a much larger sum, of course. This, as the agent has alluded to, this is at the lower end where you might expect such a contribution. So looking at the merits of the case, the size of the development, the needs of the area, the Transportation Department know what the bus stops are like, for example, in that locality, if they're different from others and so on. They have suggested, for example, improvements to the information you get, you know, electronic display, that sort of thing, just to make the bus experience better. So it gives you more information about when the next bus is coming, that sort of thing. That's typically what they expect. It doesn't have to be that. It could be another measure. But at this point, they're asking for the sum to be spent on a measure like that. I suspect it would be bus information in the bus stop. Does that answer your question?
It answers the question, but I think we have BSIP for that sort of thing. Anyway, Okay, thank you.
And Councillor Cordy.
Thank you, Chair. So we have a proposed building here for 25 rooms. Could the officers tell me whether or not the dimensions are large enough for those rooms to be double rooms?
I'd have to check the permutations of, because as you know, it's the balance between communal space and bedrooms and how they, and there are multiple permutations possible with 4 different HMOs and so on. But a lot of the rooms are, just on the rooms alone, are large enough to be double rooms, indeed. They're very large rooms. You may have noticed the occupancy condition we've got at the end. Although we acknowledge some of them could be double occupancy, that's not what's been applied for, and we want to make an assessment on what's applied for rather than it could change. So we don't want to guess whether it could be 26 or 27 or 30 occupiers. So that's why we've got an occupancy condition that says each MO should be for 8 and 5 residents as per the application. So should you grant planning permission, you know what you're granting.
That's great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I've got a little question following on from Councillor Hugh Mason. I'm trying to look at the diagram to answer my question. Is there an alleyway down the side of it? Of the left-hand side if you're looking from the high street? Okay. Thank you. So
there's a front door and it's an
Okay.
internal corridor, I think, is what you're referring to.
Okay, so my question really is regarding the commercial units, and I'm guessing I'm going to be told that that's not part of this application, but I just feel like I've got to ask it. 2 commercial units. I'm trying to work. I don't know how they're going to be used, but actually, how do they operate as a commercial unit if there's no access from the side and there's no access from the back? I mean, I'm sure there's examples of commercial units who are in similar situations, but I'm just thinking, it just feels to me that in squeezing in that HMO on the ground floor, that it possibly compromises the planning permission for an effective commercial unit. I do see where I'm going on that, because I can't actually work out what happens to their refuse, what happens to deliveries, etc. Thank you.
That's absolutely fine. I'm sure the applicant gave this, well, clearly they have, they don't want to have units that are unrentable because they haven't got the access to. So again, if you look at it's a bit hard to see in the report, well, it's not in the report, but on the presentation here, the commercial units have got their back of house kitchen storage and toilets, and then they've got their own individual back doors into a corridor, and you go back out through there, out into the past the bike stores, out into the commercial bins right at the back. So it's not immediately outside their back doors, but they will be going out there. They'll have their own commercial private collection, I believe, rather than the city council, which will be as frequently as they want it. So I dare say they'll be able to go out every day and not have to wheel huge great things once a week or something. So they can go out as they see fit and add their rubbish to the compound there.
Thank you for that answer. Any other questions, members? Nope. Okay. Comments and any recommendations? Councillor Smythe.
Thank you, Chair. I'm rather encouraged by this application because we do have a surfeit of closed banks and that sort of thing, and it doesn't half destroy the high street. And the high street, this building seems to me is ideally located to be developed in the way that indicated on this application. It'll bring life back to the high street, which is so important. It'll bring trade back to small shops and pubs and things in the high street. It's quite a number of people, 25 beds that are being provided, and that'll be very useful for the local economy. In fact, we have approved applications like this before, and it does have the effect. Certainly, it would be very difficult to justify the development of HMOs using single-family dwellings immediately around this site. This will absorb that 10% for quite a few neighbours. and likely for more. We don't know the numbers, but actually it's in a way, it's an insurance against further development close to the building of conversion of houses into family houses into HMOs. I'm very pleased that they have subdivided it into 4 HMOs. I think that's sensible. That makes a much more sociable environment for the people who are living there. It means each HMO can develop its own culture much more easily than you could if it was a 25-bed HMO. And we always have great difficulty with a 25-bed HMO in deciding the amount of communal space there should be and what that should be like. And communal space when shared by 25 is quite different than when shared by smaller numbers. So I would like to support this application. I think it will provide much needed accommodation locally. The bedrooms are large, they are limited to the use by one person, and I think it's been thought through very well. So I'd like to propose that we follow the officer's recommendation and go with this application. I'd like to see actually more of these developed on high streets. We have developed one on, approved one on Fratton Road, because automatically they're closer then to sometimes to public parking they can use, but also to buses and to the train station. And this couldn't be closer or more convenient for people really. And also often they have much larger rooms and better accommodation generally than you can get out of the 6th or 7th bedroom in a domestic dwelling. So I would like to support this and recommend the officer's recommendation to approve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smythe. Is there anyone else who wants to speak? Okay, Councillor Cordy. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a shame when banks close. We've got far too many closing at the moment. But with this development, we've got something that would exceed now our 10% threshold for a balanced community. It also wouldn't provide any parking provision at all. And I believe this contravenes PCS 20 and PCS 21. There's an expectation for 8 spaces with this building, this development, and therefore I propose that we oppose the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Oh, I think it was Councillor Atwell just got in there before you, Councillor North. I have to rely on my eyesight.
I'd like to second that proposal.
Councillor Cordy's proposal.
Actually, while I've got the floor, I also think I think there's still some more work to do about overlooking as well, and I don't know if Councillor Cordy would include that in his motion, but for me, I still feel there's some work to be done on the overlooking from the first floor windows.
So I think we've got 2 strong things here. We've got PCS 20 and a PCS 21. I wouldn't know where to go with that. Happy to seek advice.
Okay, I'll come back to Simon.
Thank you. On the matter of parking, I hadn't explored that any further. I just simply answered about the sustainable transport links, which are very good, the contribution and the location with respect to services and shops and so on. If we could have the slide up, please, Lisa. I did actually go out to the site to have a look and see what the parking conditions are like. Along Magdala Road, yes, it's chocker. There were 3 or 4 spaces last night I saw along that section, you can see, and a few more, 3 or 4 more before you get to Mulberry Lane. The High Street and so on doesn't have that sort of parking. On Dorset Crescent, which you can see at the rear of the site, circling round to the southeast, there is plenty of parking along there. From the point of the arrow further east, there's a little local park, Nosey Road Park, I think it is. The housing that's on the northern side of Dorking Crescent has its own parking, mostly on driveways and whatnot. I counted about 14 spaces there last night, midday, mid-evening, midweek, term time. So if members were concerned about parking congestion in pretty close proximity, and I've seen that before when I've been up to the area looking at another site and local parking pressures. So the on-street parking there is maintained, should members be concerned about that.
Okay. Was anyone else waiting to... Councillor Mason.
I'm seconding Councillor Smythe's proposal. I think if we are going to have HMOs in this city, and we are obviously going to have them, purpose-built HMOs are much preferable to the turning of family homes into HMOs, because the facilities required by an individual living are being considered here and built from scratch. I think this is a good move. I am aware of Councillor North's concerns about this being in excess of 10%, but there are times when I think we need to be pragmatic and think through what are the alternatives. I cannot see any viable alternative for this building than the upper floors being turned, upper part being turned into residential property. It is not the type of building which could feasibly be turned into a couple of flats, not looking at the structure of the building. So I think that what we have got here is a good option, given the location, given the type of building, and given the quality of the design and development which we see before us. So I'm happy to second the proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Anyone else? Councillor Vallely.
This is really difficult for me because I would normally not vote for something over 10%. And I understand that people living at the back will be upset if this happens. But I ask you to think about the people who can't get on the property ladder by hook or by crook. They have to be in these situations for years. Things are different from and our friends bought houses. It's just so different now. And high quality HMOs are more rare than you would think. I could fill it easily with people from Cosham and Muiring who are living in not good HMOs, tomorrow, to be frank with you. I think we sent them off to look at and resolve the design issues. They've come back with them resolved as far as I can see. Cosham High Street's on its knees. It needs regenerating. This will help that. It'll bring money to people who shop in the local Tesco's, in the corner shops. And I'm going to have to agree with Councillor Smythe to say yes to it.
Thank you. Councillor Atwell wants to come back in with another comment.
I'll just sort of come back in and and I understand everyone's pragmatism around this, but I also hear all the time how important it is to adhere to policy and our standards. So I don't think we can have it both ways. This clearly exceeds our policy around mixed and balanced communities. It's nowhere near our parking standard. So for me, it's pretty obvious that we must refuse this application.
Thank you, Councillor Atwell. I'm going to go to Councillor Smythe, then I'm going to go to Councillor North, and then I'm going to come back to you, Councillor Vallely. Councillor Smythe first.
I don't consider that this does breach certainly the spirit of our 10% mixed and balanced communities objective. Look at the map. Half of the map is commercial and other buildings on the high street. So there aren't going to be, you're not measuring, you're not taking account of the inevitable statistics that come out. If we have an application for a HMO that's bordering on a park, then there are less dwellings to take into account in the calculation. And certainly that's really relevant to me. We're talking about mixed and balanced communities. This, if anything, this community is already unbalanced by being largely commercial and shops, and we don't mean that. That's not what we mean. The geography of this particular site is that it will have an effect on dampening down applications for more HMOs taking valuable dwellings, those that are on the map. If you look at the map, you can see. But the rest of the actual buildings on the ground aren't even calculated in this calculation because there are so few of them. And I do think we do have to apply common sense and some bit of understanding about statistics and what we mean by a mixed and balanced community. I think this adds to the mixed and balance of the community because we have less vacant shops along there and because there isn't a high concentration of HMOs in that particular 50 square metres we have. So I really do think let's apply common sense to this.
Thank you. Councillor North.
Thank you. Obviously, the officers of Terman said they've been out, they've checked, they've even admitted that Magdala Road is literally chock-a-block with cars. Potentially, we've got 25 properties here. Out of them 25, you can have another 15 cars going round and round in circles looking for parking spaces. There is a local park there. You've got local children walking around, local residents trying to cross over. The extra footfall of them cars going around is going to cause issues for local residents and children. How can we allow this to go through when we have no parking spaces for them? It is against PCS 21.
Councillor Vallely, thank you for that.
And
comment.
if we didn't have really good transport links all around, I would vote against it. But we have a train station, we have a bus station, and people walk to QA regularly. That's the difference.
Any one more.
Just while we're just to kind of bring it to I mean, I'll be interested to see whether we apply the same level of common sense when it's 8% of HMOs within a 50-metre radius in future applications. If we're in this territory where 8%, is we might apply common sense to an 8% application as we are to the 12% application, or maybe a 15% application. I think the 10% rule is there for a reason, and I think if we start sort of messing with it, it's a slippery slope.
Okay.
Just look at the maths of it, the statistics of it. This 10% rule is really important in residential areas, absolutely crucial. But I can think of a lot of some hypothetical places or streets in Portsmouth where you wouldn't get it like this one, where you wouldn't get 10% because there are so few houses there. What happens if there was an HMO application on the edge of one of our industrial estates? And it was and in other ways it was a suitable place. I mean, often they don't have public transport in the same way. They don't help with the high street regeneration. But you could draw lots and lots of circles around Portsmouth, where I mean the 10% rule is absolutely my bedrock. I think it's really important. I've never voted for an application that's gone against it. But let's look at the actual geography of what's on the ground, please.
Councillor Vallely, and I think we're going to move to a vote.
People aren't stupid. When they go to rent places, they see the amount of space in car parks and they see the difficulty to park. So they move on and go to somewhere where there's space. So lots of people don't have cars, can't afford them, they're saving for a deposit, and this is ideal for them. We've got, single parents, we've got young people, we've got a lot of people who are on low incomes, and having a car isn't for them.
Okay. This was why, when I first looked at this application, I thought I really wish it didn't have that HMO on the ground floor, because I think it would have been a clear-cut case. But I understand that what we've got before us is what we're making a decision on. So, if I have done my chairing correctly, we have a proposal before us for objection, which was seconded before the first proposal was seconded. So that's Councillor Cordy put forward a recommendation for objecting and refusing officers' recommendations based on PCS 20 and 21, so specifically parking and the 10% rule. Councillor Atwell added something around wanting, it was seconded by Councillor Atwell, and he had something around further work on overlooking. I don't know if we've got some words for this, which are planning speak.
Yes, Chair. So we don't recommend the use of PCS 21. That's a housing density policy that applies to new residential development, sets density levels across the city. So if the issue is about the breach of the 10%, That's in relation to PCS 17 and the HMO SPD, and then a parking. PCS 20, isn't it?
17.
Sorry, I've got it the wrong way around. PCS 17 is parking and PCS 20 is the HMO policies. So yes, that would be our recommendation. And just to emphasise the point and the point we were making earlier, if a policy breaches our guidance, like in the HMO, like in the 10%, that's not the end of the matter. We need to be able to show what the harm is. And the reason for making a balanced recommendation to approve the application is because of the level of properties in the area affected by the HMO, and bearing in mind it is on the high street. So a breach of that guidance in the HMO is not automatically a reason for refusal. There needs to be a harm that follows from that we can defend, Chair.
Okay, I think we need to go to a vote. So the proposal before us is for objecting and
I put my proposal first.
but I understand it's who seconds it
okay.
first.
Fair enough.
Yeah, no, you did get yours first. I've been keeping a track of what order things came in. So the first vote that we will have is on the proposal from Councillor Cordy, seconded by Councillor Atwell, to object to the officer's recommendation based on those things that we've just explored there.
Chairman, sorry, Chairman, could we seek some clarity on, Councillor Atwell, with the matter of the privacy and so on? Just wanted to be absolutely clear on that. Was that the privacy of the proposed occupiers or the Magdala Road properties, or both? And which particular relationship, please?
The Magdala Road, you showed us a slide that clearly demonstrated that you could look from that first floor room into the back of the house opposite, or to the side.
Okay, so from those upper floor windows, although the directional look is sought to achieve that, but it's still into their gardens and windows.
I think the mitigation isn't quite there.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so all those in favour of this proposal before us? 4. All those against? 4. I believe that means...
The chair can use a casting vote.
Yeah, so I would not be supporting this motion that's been put forward. So, no. So, therefore, does that by default mean that officer's recommendation... So we have to go to the second vote?
We go to the second vote.
So that proposal falls. So we now go to the second proposal, which is to support officer's recommendation, which was put forward by Councillor Smythe, seconded by Councillor Mason. All those in favour? That's 4 in favour. All those against? 4 against, not surprisingly. Therefore, officer's recommendation is... It was 4-4.
You can use your casting vote.
So I use my
Chair.
casting vote to say that that motion is carried and planning permission is therefore granted. We'll just hold the meeting until people have left the gallery. Thank Thank you. Okay, we'll start the meeting again.
Can we have just a moment? I really don't like being threatened in planning committee. I find it seriously frightening. And with what's going on in the country, I think perhaps we need a couple of minutes just to either go to the loo or
I
whatever.
agree with you.
I mean, this is shocking to be threatened like this when we're doing our duty.
Yeah.
It might be worth waiting a little while until they've left the building.
Yeah, I think we'll take a little comfort break. Welcome back, everyone. It's a much needed little respite. Okay, so I've had a request during that break to if we could then take item 8 next, because the people who are involved in this item have other meetings. I'm happy to do that. Are members happy to do that? Nods of agreement all round. So what we'll do is we'll go to item 8, which is 70 Montgomery Road. And there are no deputy.
Magdala Road, if that's...
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, it's item 9. Sorry, that's I got the wrong one. Magdala Road. Sorry, item 9. Let's go. Thanks for correcting me. So we'll go to that item now. Okay, so who's presenting that? David's presenting that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. Oh, excuse me. So this is an application, 31 Magdala Road, which is just to the east of the site we've just been looking at in Cosham. And it's the conversion of the existing property, which is subdivided into 2 flats, into a single Class C3B dwelling house where care is provided. The application comes to you solely because the applicant is PCC and is the owner of the site. And you'll note from the report, we received a single comment, not an objection, just asking for further information. The property is shown in highlighted in there. You've got a lengthy back garden, and then if you go west along Magdala Road, you'll hit the high street at Cosham. So this is existing property, so it's the right-hand side of this semi-detached property, and the right-hand side of it is divided into 2 flats currently, and they will be converted into a single dwelling house as part of the proposals. So here's the existing layout. So there's access to the upper flats from the front through the ground floor, and then the ground floor flat, and then the upper flat over 2 floors. There's also an existing stepped access up to the first floor to the first floor unit, and that will be removed as part of these proposals. So this is how the proposed C3B unit will be laid out. You can see there's communal living spaces and kitchen on ground floor. And then on first floor we have 5 bedrooms over the first and second floors with shared bathrooms. Minor alterations are proposed. You've got this existing staircase to the external staircase to the side, and that will be removed, and then the parts of the building made good. Just a few photos of the interior, showing the existing layout of the properties, and then on the right hand side you've got the external access, which will be removed, and a view into the garden. So, Chair, yes, as set out, we were previously scheduled this to come to the committee a couple of cycles ago, but the applicant requested that it be delayed while they carried out more local engagement. We obviously are happy to condone all forms of further public engagement with the community about our proposals. As noted, we've only had 1 comment on the scheme. Just to draw attention to the SMAT, where we've just tweaked the description of development, so it's entirely clear that the proposal takes the 2 flats and converts into a single unit. And we note that we've been, the council as the applicant has been entirely honest about its proposed use within Class C3B. It didn't need to be explicit in that regard. It could just propose to use the property as a C3 use, because there's no form of development moving between the various Class C3A, B or C uses. That's not an active development. The minor physical alterations we think are actually an improvement. They're obviously later additions, For the reasons set out in the report, we're content to recommend the scheme for approval.
Thank you, David. Okay, so we have two deputations, both one from the applicant, both from the applicant's representatives. So who's going to go first? You're going to go first.
I'll go first. So, yeah, just to give a bit of context to the application, the property was built in circa 1980 as a single dwelling and then converted into flats in 1975. The layout of the conversion sees the ground floor flat, which is currently occupied, extend into the first floor, which was on one of the slides shared a second ago. Surveys were undertaken by Portsmouth City Council in June 2020, August 2020 and May 2021, and it established that there is an issue with fire separation between the two existing flats, and that the fire separation is not adequate, and major works are required to address this, which is the intent of the scheme that has been put forward. Mitigation at present is that Portsmouth City Council are not letting the upper floor apartment to avoid the risk to the upper floor residents. The scheme proposed addresses the fire risk. The conversion and refurbishment works are extensive, and the fire safety parameters are different for a single dwelling, and therefore will address the fire risk. That is my delegation concluded.
Thank you. So we'll go straight on to Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Just given the size of the property, its current condition, and it is really unusual in terms of having a ground floor flat with a first floor bedroom, so incredibly difficult to do the fire separation. We are aware that the property needs extensive repairs, but based on its location being non-estate, close to Cosham High Street, and obviously we've recognised all of the rail and transport links and shopping facilities that are available there. We are supporting the change into supported accommodation, which will be managed by a specialist team and supported by on-site support providers. It is acknowledged that we have demand for both general needs accommodation and supported housing accommodation, but the provision of supported housing will look to bring people placed currently in high-cost out-of-city and county placements back to the city, and the property will enable people to live more independently with support from externally commissioned support providers.
Thank you, Mark. That concludes the deputations. So over to members for any questions about this. No? No questions. Any comments? Or proposals, indeed? Councillor Valley. Oh, sorry.
I propose that we pass this motion, please. It's much needed, and supported living. People won't be driving all over the place. They won't be able to drive. It'll just be the people that are staying overnight and during the day.
Thank you, Councillor Valley. Councillor North.
I'd like to second Councillor Valley's motion.
Thank you, Councillor North. Any other comments? So we have a proposal before us to support officers' recommendations, proposed by Councillor Valley, seconded by Councillor North. All those in favour? That is unanimous. So that's all 8 of us. I bet you wish that we'd bumped it up the agenda quicker. Sorry, that was probably record speed, but thank you very much for your patience, and enjoy the rest of your day. You can get to your meetings. Thank you. Okay. So that was 8. So if I'm doing this correctly, I think we are now back to item 6, which is 29 Moorland Road. 29 Moorland Road. We've got one deputation, but Simon is going to do his presentation first. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. An application 29 Moreland Road, change of use from a Class C3 dwelling house to a flexible use class within multiple occupation C4 or a dwelling house C3. That means if granted planning consent, there is no need to apply for planning permission to move between C3 or C4, the dwelling house, or HMO backwards and forwards over a 10-year period. The application has come to committee because of 6 objections and due to a call-in by Councillor Simpson. The application site is in Fratton Ward. It's a mid-terrace of modest scale. There it is, it's the one in the middle. With respect to the 50-metre radius, in the SMAT, we've just had another look at the radius because it overlaps some properties very finely, and you really have to look at it with a magnifying glass. We've looked at it again and concluded that there are actually 2 more residential properties in total. Well, 3 more, and 1 we think is excluded. So we've changed the total number from 87 to 89, which changes the percentage to 7.87, a minor change to the overall balance. So as you can see there, I think there are 6 existing HMOs with the sort of purple diamonds, one of them next door to the application site, and this would be a 7th at 7.87%. That would still comply with your guidance on a mixed and balanced community. For completeness, the application is retrospective. It is already in use as an HMO and has a licence. Paragraph 5.5, we said it was licensed for 7 occupiers. I believe actually it's 5, so a correction there for 1 year, a 5-bedroom, 5-person dwelling house. But officers are happy that it complies with the mixed and balanced community policy. Turning next to the accommodation, we have different plans have come in, changes and mistakes being corrected and so on, but there are no proposed changes to the layout. So what you see is the existing layout and proposed layout, so it's not one of those houses that's been gutted and changed and so on. So it's a traditional small terrace there with the front door, the 2 rooms off the hallway, stairs up the middle, kitchen and bathroom. So they are seeking to regularise effectively what they already have a licence for in terms of the wider use. In terms, although they have a licence apparently for 5 persons, officers aren't happy with that. Based on the floor sizes, we are only happy to recommend 3 persons. So if I take you through the numbers, this is the scenario where you have 3 separate communal rooms instead of the more common 1 large one, reflecting the fact that they don't want to knock the property about. So the front living room there is 9.74. It ought to be 11 square metres, so that's slightly under. The middle living room is 10.22. Again, that ought to be 11, so that's slightly under. The kitchen is 8.52 square metres, so that's over the 7 metres squared expected, and the bathroom is 4.92, which is also over the 3.74. So we've got a balance there across the ground floor of the 2 front rooms being on the small side and the 2 back rooms being on the larger side. So there's a balance there to take into account. But when you go upstairs, each of the rooms ought to be 6.51, considering the communal space downstairs. They all exceed that. So the smallest room at the back is 8.51. The middle room is 10.28, and the front room is 13.32. So pretty much double the size. So officers felt, although the 2 living rooms at the front are slightly smaller than recommended sizes, the other communal rooms are slightly larger, and then the bedrooms are either larger or significantly larger. So we thought, as a whole, the house occupied by 3 persons, which we've got a condition for, will be absolutely fine in terms of the standard of accommodation it would provide. And also think that this could be occupied by a family, by 1 person, but it could easily be a family, couldn't it, with a couple in the front, 2 or 3, 4 children, 1 or 2. So the level of occupancy, 3 in a small terrace is deemed perfectly acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have 1 deputation by Jacob Short. You have 6 minutes, starting.
Thank you. Chair, members of the committee. First of all, I would like to thank Councillor Russell Simpson for calling this application in and giving residents the opportunity for their voices to be heard by elected officials. My name is Jacob Short and I'm a community campaigner in Fratton. There is a growing concern across our community about the continued increase of HMOs in this area. The concentration of these properties is having a clear and negative impact on the wider neighbourhood, including this prospective HMO already having one next door. This does not just alter the character of the community, it also reduces the availability of much-needed family homes. While the proposal before you today does not breach the current 10% threshold, it reinforces the point that many residents and councillors have been making. The threshold should be reduced to 5%. That way, HMOs can remain available as an option, but their impact on communities and infrastructure is better managed. Conversions of traditional family houses, while this one isn't being converted, is often at a cost. The permanent loss of gardens and green spaces, street features and building fabrics. The building works themselves can also cause damage to neighbouring properties. Parking provisions are consistently inadequate, often falling short by around 0.5 spaces per property, adding to already severe congestion. This property falls within the GA parking zone, which has 2 hours free parking, which surrounding zones already abuse. Additionally, PCC's own transport department has raised concerns about the lack of cycle storage presented. Sustainability is another area being overlooked. Waste and refuse issues continue to escalate, especially where recycling provision is unclear or non-existent. Residents also report ongoing concerns with water pressure and drainage capacity, issues that are only made worse by further intensification of housing. The quality of life both within and around HMOs is also a problem. Complaints are consistently higher for these properties than other housing types. Noise pollution is one of the most common issues raised by neighbours. Many HMOs are also inaccessible for disabled users, making them unsuitable for a significant portion of the community. Finally, the strain on local services cannot be ignored. With serious difficulties already in accessing doctors, dentists, etc., adding further density through HMOs worsens these pressures. Residents have also expressed frustration that this property has already been operating as a HMO without planning approval, with no application ever being submitted, as noted by PCC's response. This objection was made exactly 4 months ago today, on the 10th of May 2025. Has this been investigated since? The same objector even noted that the previous owner raised concerns, but again, no actions were taken. This leaves the community feeling ignored and unsupported. Members, this is more than just one property. It is about cumulative impact of decisions being made here and across our cities. Fratton Streets cannot hold more residents, especially cramming multiple into one property. Fratton Ward already has over 200 HMOs, being probably the smallest ward in the city. I urge you to put residents first on this occasion. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your deputation, Jacob. Okay, members, questions? Councillor Mason, you have a question.
I note that the rear living room lies immediately underneath a room which is of a size where it could be used, will be used as a bedroom. Is there any reason why the living room should not in future be turned into a bedroom? That rear living room.
Chair, we've got the, thank you, Lisa. So you'll see as part of the recommendation that we've suggested a condition restricting occupancy to a maximum of 3 occupants in this instance. So we would retain control over the possibility of either of those downstairs living spaces being converted into bedrooms should the application be approved. Hopefully that addresses that concern, Chair.
Any other questions? Questions. Councillor Smythe.
Noting the fact that the proposal is going to be conditional on 3 residents, that I mean, if it's actually used as a family dwelling, it could be used by 5 or 6 people, couldn't it? Is that right?
Can we have confirmation of that, please?
Yes, it's one person or however many you want to try and squeeze in. Yeah.
In a family dwelling, it's one person or how many you want to squeeze in. In this, as an HMO, it would be a maximum of 3. Okay, that's good to clarify that. Any other questions? Okay, members, comments or proposals? Tumbleweed. Councillor Smythe.
I propose that as it's clearly limited to 3 people if it's in HMO use, that we agree the officer's recommendation, including that condition and the condition on the cycle space. Thank you.
I second that.
Second to Councillor Vanley. Are there any other either comments or counter proposals? Councillor Atwell.
That said, the communal space does not meet our standards. And so I will move a motion to refuse that the available communal space does not reach our standards.
Okay, any other comments or Councillor North?
I'll second Councillor Atwell's proposal.
Thought that would be the case. Councillor. So Councillor Smythe, you want to make a comment?
Can I just say further that it does meet our standards, because if you add those 3 communal areas, and I wouldn't add the bathroom into that, they are more than sufficient for what we need in this 3-person scenario. If there were any more than 3 people, then Councillor Atwell is completely right. It would be, we know from experiencing those houses, it could seem to be cramped, but it isn't with 3 people. It's fine. They've actually got a communal space each if they don't want to meet very much.
I'm just trying to do the maths. I see. So if you've got living room 1, living room 2, and the kitchen put together without the bathroom, then it as a combined it meets. And I guess you're referring to exceeds, and you're referring to other previous cases, which of course are not related to this, but where we might have debated this, where we often see the kitchen and living area combined anyway. Yes. Okay.
Very commonly do. But it'd be quite nice if you were one of 3 people living upstairs and you didn't want to watch the same television programme as somebody else living there. You've got a bit of choice and you're only one person.
Okay, thanks. It was worth teasing that out. Okay, so we have a proposal before us from Councillor Smythe, seconded by Councillor Valley swiftly, which means that it's the first vote that we go to approve officers' recommendations. All those in favour? I think there's going to be a theme today. And those against? 4. So 4 in favour, 4 against. So Chair's casting vote again to approve officers' recommendation. Thank you, everyone. So, with the next one, Moreland Road, we've done that one, is Montgomery Road, so item 7. I think that's right. No. Kirby Road. No, that was the one that was that was the one that's been dealt with. So Montgomery Road. The numbering with the deputation on the deputations list and the numbering in here is different, which is why I need to check the agenda. Okay, so we are now doing Kirby Road. No, we're not. We're doing, sorry, Montgomery Road. Okay, right. So page 61, Montgomery Road, item 8 or item 7 on the deputations list. Okay. Officer, who's doing it? Simon. Okay, if you present it.
Thank you, Chair. 70 Montgomery Road, change of use from a house and multiple occupation to an 8-bedroom, 8-person house and multiple occupation. For clarification, it's from a 5 persons to 8 persons, so an intensity of or increase in occupation. It's come to the Planning Committee because of receiving 6 objections. I do have a SMAT later and a no deputations. Right, so we're at North Southsea, just off Victoria Road North, isn't it there? So we're just behind the mosque and the church there on Montgomery Road. It's, I think it's mid terrace. If we move on to the next one, thank you. There we are. Terraced house. Right, it's. I think I'll take you through the SMAT straight away, actually, because it helps deal with this issue. Councillor Swan has written to the case officer, noting this application is presented as an existing C4 HMO, wanting a change of use to an 8-bedroom, 8-person sui generis. He notes it's on the HMO database as having a licence, but there's no planning permission. The only planning history is a prior approval extension. He's noted there are 27 HMOs in the 50-metre radius, 7 in a row, and this is one of those. Surely this cannot be seen as acceptable in any way, shape or form in an area already acknowledged to be utterly saturated. Please can you explain why this has not been rejected out of hand? So he's correct to say that there is not an existing Class C4 planning permission or indeed an established use certificate. I'll read the officer response. As covered in the published committee response, the applicant has provided HMO tenancy agreements for a period of 10 years prior to the application being submitted. Also, private sector housing have provided details of past and present HMO licences from 2014. Officers are therefore satisfied that the current C4 HMO use is lawful and there is no need, that's the key point, there's no need to apply for retrospective planning permission or lawful development certificate. So we do receive applications sometimes where people are seeking an increase in occupancy from C4, small HMO, to a sui generis larger. If they don't have a planning permission or lawful development certificate to prove it's C4, we will ask them for some evidence to provide that information. If they don't provide that evidence, we will say, and have done, no, this is not C4, where you need to apply from C3 dwelling house to the sui generis, which is a different kettle of fish with respect to the establishment of an extra HMO in the area. So Councillor Swan is saying, well, hold on, it doesn't have planning permission, so how can you treat it already as a Class C4 HMO? We can do that because on the evidence in front of us, it's strong evidence. Tenancy agreements for 10 years, the requisite period to establish lawful use, and licences. So although they don't have the piece of paper with a planning permission or and lawful development certificate, they have provided clear evidence to show us that it is nevertheless lawful. And there's no point in asking someone to go through a process when it is obvious that is the case. I can explain that further with other examples should you want me to. So we are treating it already as a lawful HMO, which means, moving on to Councillor Swan's point about the numbers, the increase in occupancy of 3 persons would not introduce a new HMO. And that's where the 10% threshold is applicable. Yes, extra occupancy of 3 persons proposed, but not a new HMO. So that element of the policy doesn't come into play. There is no change, as that description shows. There are 27 out of 92 properties, residential properties in HMO use currently, and that wouldn't change because it is already an HMO. So that is the explanation there. Happy to go on to that any further. Moving on to the standard of accommodation. Now, this is the other distinction I should make, of course. This is 3 extra persons. Members are used to, most committees we see increases in intensity of occupation, typically of 1 or 2 more persons, say from 6 to 7 or 7 to 8 or 6 to 8. Each on their own merits, but officers tend to conclude with just 1 extra or 2 extra people. There's not a material change. Members decide whether or not they agree. In this instance, because there are 3 extra people, we've looked in some detail, as you may have seen in the report. Do officers believe there is a material change that needs planning permission? In this case, we believe there is. It's not just 1 or 2, it's 3. In particular, the waste and recycling. The change from the 5-bed HMO and the bin storage there to 8 persons requires much more bin storage, and that we feel is material. It doesn't change the assessment necessarily, it is just a material change that requires planning permission. So officers feel it does need planning permission. So it's different to the ones we normally see. Then moving on to an assessment as to whether or not the development is acceptable. There is space on the front yard. The refuse officer didn't think there was, but we've measured it, and there is space for the bins on the front yard between the bin, the bay window and the wall. And then in terms of the suitability of the accommodation, if we go into the floor plans, there is the prior approval rear extension that, thank you, there's existing elevations, existing floor plans. So on the elevations there, on the right-hand side, you can see at the top the prior approval rear extension that Councillor Swan referred to. And then up on the roof is a permitted development roof extension that would provide the extra space for extra accommodation. And then moving on to the floor plans, each of the bedrooms exceeds the 10 square metres required, and the combined living space is 35.4. So actually, they could have a smaller living space than that, or the bedrooms could at least be smaller as well. So it's a good standard accommodation. This one has a slightly different arrangement. They're not en suites. So bedrooms 1 and 2, there's a communal loo there with a hand wash basin. So for people downstairs, that's the nearest place to go to the loo. Upstairs, there's a shared bathroom between bedrooms 4 and 3, and another one next to bedroom 5, and another shared bathroom on the top floor. So slightly different arrangement there, but 3 shared bathrooms for 8 residents, and the communal WC meets your standards. So officers are happy to recommend approval to you with the relevant conditions.
Thanks, Simon. Are you doing a deputation on this, Mr. Farr? Okay. Sorry, my list was all muddled.
That's fine, I wasn't put on the list for some reason.
6 minutes you have.
Thank you. Slightly less to say on this one because it's a bit more straightforward. It's about improving an existing HMO. So it's here today because it had 6 adverse comments based on material planning considerations, although the definition of a material planning consideration is one that is relevant to making the planning decision in question. All 6 of the comments came from around 2 kilometres away as far as the crow flies, and 3 of them object to a family home being converted to an HMO. The description of development alone states it's an existing one, and the applicant has provided sufficient evidence to confirm that this is a pre-Article 4 HMO. I just want to make a point that it's pre-Article 4. Some people think we've been hiding it for 10 years. We just needed to provide 10 years of evidence. This evidence is not published online as it contains a lot of personal information, but it's definitely there, and I'm sure the planners would allow the councillors to see that if they weren't sure. It is in an area where the density is well above 10% already, but this is probably one of the reasons why the Article 4 was introduced. There's a lot of student HMOs in the area. The Article 4 has put a stop to any more being made around here, but that doesn't mean there isn't any scope to improve the ones that are there. As my colleague who's not here today has told you in previous meetings, Applecore are responsible for the design of many HMOs across the country, designs that are always compliant with licensing and building standards, and we always strive to comply with planning policies. In fact, where other authorities do not have as much control or standards with their HMOs, we apply the Portsmouth standard to our designs to ensure the best quality possible for future occupiers. This particular proposal offers 8 very spacious rooms along with a very spacious communal area. On this occasion, there are no en-suites, but still adequate sanitary facilities for the occupiers. It may be welcomed that there will be less strain on the sewers with just fewer bathrooms. As stated on the plans and also reinforced by the description of development, all rooms will be for single use. While occupancy may be a licensing matter, by approving the plans and development as described, you are by default ensuring the occupancy remains at 8. The site is in a good, sustainable area, close to shops, the university, the city centre, the public transport routes, and once again, those red scooters. The application complies with the normal policies and SPDs, and we're hoping that you will agree with the officer recommendation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. Okay, members, questions? Councillor Smythe.
I don't think it mentions it in the report, but it's clear that the statements are made that it's been an HMO for more than 10 years. How many people has it been occupied by in that time? And maybe it's changed.
The licensing certainly, because for C4 use, of course, that's up to 6 people, and we don't always specify if it can accommodate 6. We don't say so usually, and it might be occupied by 3, 4, 5 or 6. Of course, there's no planning history to that effect. The tenancy agreements, we would have details of that. It's not in the report. The licence refers to 5 persons. That's the current licence and the previous ones. So it would appear, hence that's why we've assessed it as 5 persons, proposed increase to 8.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions from anyone? Okay. Any comments or proposals? Councillor Atwell got in there quick.
Well, look, just it gets. This is where it doesn't make things don't make sense for me. That it says very clearly in the report there is no justification whatsoever for withholding planning consent on the matter of parking, even though the report in the same paragraph says that we're 103% capacity in terms of the parking zone, and that the extra 3 people are a material change. Now, but if I moved a motion on parking, I know I'm not going to get anywhere. It doesn't make any sense to me that it's here because we understand there's material change, but that parking can't be considered as part of that material change when we know that it's already oversubscribed for parking in that area, as well as Councillor Horton and I both represent areas that are, you know, I mean, 29%, I'm surprised it's not more. Actually, I thought it might be more. Anyway, so that's my comment. I'm not moving a motion, but it's frustrating and doesn't make sense to me.
I don't know whether the officers can add to that, sort of explore that frustration about what appears to be a kind of like inconsistency.
Yeah, I mean, I live in a residence parking zone that's over 100%, but I've never not been able to park in my road or very close by, but nearly always in my road. I think there's nearly always someone away, that sort of thing. So although it can be over 100%, there are still spaces on the street, in my experience, certainly, and I think that's the basis on which the Transportation Department operate. But in this instance, anyway, being in a residence parking zone, whether it's as a C3 dwelling house, which is already lost, but or a house of multiple occupancy, whether it's 3 persons or 20 persons, there can only be a maximum of 2 or 3 permits issued to that premises, which is the same whether it's in C3 use or HMO use. So that's the effective control.
Yeah, I think where in residence parking zones, the parking difference is almost clearer logically than some of the others. Anyone else got any comments on this or proposals? Councillor Mason.
in some ways, this does feel like cramming people in, raising a relatively small property to 8. But on the other hand, on planning grounds, I can see no grounds on which we could reasonably refuse this. And so I propose the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Smythe.
Happy to second that.
Any other proposals? Okay. So we have a proposal in front of us by Councillor Mason, seconded by Councillor Smythe, to reluctantly move officers' recommendations, I think is what I picked up. All those in favour? Three. All those against? All those against? All those abstaining? Okay, so that falls. Oh no, sorry. That's carried. So beg your pardon. That is carried with 3. Okay. Right. Next agenda item. Is 21 Folkestone, which is agenda item 10, I believe. Okay. Simon again.
Thank you,
There we
Chair.
go. Thank you.
21 Folkestone Road, the construction of a single-storey rear extension following demolition of the existing conservatory. This application has come to committee purely because the applicant is an employee of the council. Now it's Mid Terrace up there in Baffins, just north of Tangier Road. Thank you. There we are, Mid Terrace with the grey painting. So at the rear, on the left-hand side, you can see an L-shaped conservatory that fills the light well to the side and extends beyond the rear of the property, pretty common. So on the right-hand side is the proposal. It's just half a metre deeper, you can see, at the end, at the garden end, so it's slightly longer, but otherwise very similar footprint. If we go on to the elevations, you can see the change. So top right is existing, so it's a lean-to L-shaped conservatory with a pitched roof. So down below on the top, bottom right is the proposal flat roof. So it gets slightly longer, half a metre longer, and then it swings and roundabouts. It's lower where it meets the back wall of the house because it's got the flat roof, and it's slightly higher on the left-hand side where it is projecting onto the garden. So pretty similar effect, really, upon the replacement proposal. So no objection from the neighbour, no objection from the planning officer, recommended for approval.
And there are no deputations, I believe. No deputations. Questions? Councillor Hugh Mason.
Am I right that if this were from anyone other than an employee of the Portsmouth City Council, this would be considered permitted development?
Not permitted development, but we would have approved it under delegated powers.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, any comments or proposals? Councillor Mason.
I propose the officer's recommendation. It seems an eminently sensible little development.
And I'm happy to second that. So we'll go straight to a vote to move officers' recommendations for approval. All those in favour? That is unanimous, all 8 of us. So planning permission is therefore granted. think that brings us on to our final...
Yes, Chair. So just final item. After the agenda was published, members were circulated an additional report about the application 24-00259 at Eastney Community Centre, Bransbury Park. Members will recall that on 18th of December 2024, the Planning Committee considered that planning application for the provision of a new leisure centre at Bransbury Park, and at the meeting members resolved to grant the consent subject to the securing of certain planning gains. So you see those set out in the report. Those relate to Section 278 highway improvement works and off-site mitigation, travel plan monitoring, and mitigation for the loss of outdoor courts at Bransbury Park. The purpose of taking this matter today is just to provide an update and some clarity before the decision is issued, and to use the opportunity to amend a drafting error that's in the minutes of the meeting. So in the additional report, the resolution as follows: to grant conditional planning permission subject to completion of a suitable mechanism of agreement to secure the highway improvement works, the travel plan monitoring and the mitigation for the loss of the outdoor courts, and then to delegate that to the Assistant Director. As you see from the update, a unilateral undertaking has been drafted and submitted. That's now been sent to us and is on the website for inspection. And you'll see from the update that this secures the highway improvement works. So these relate to new access arrangements on Bransbury Road, car park enlargement, and any traffic regulation orders necessary in relation to that work. In addition, there's financial contribution towards travel plan monitoring of £5,000, payable before the first occupation of development, and that will allow us to manage traffic and travel to the site. And then the loss of outdoor court mitigation from Bransbury Park. You'll see a whole list of proposed works throughout the city to provide that mitigation at sites in Baffins, Milton Park, Mountbatten Centre and the Portsmouth Tennis Centre. And that will provide a variety of outdoor tennis courts, multi-use games areas, netball courts, goalposts. I think I've covered most of that. Those are all external courts, and then the monitoring of the planning obligations. So the unilateral undertaking has been provided, and we are ready to issue the planning permission now. We'll do so following this meeting as the agreement is complete, and we can draw the conditions together as agreed by members and issue that. But this is just a report for clarity as an update, and just to confirm the decision made by members at the time, and that on our intention to issue a planning permission on the basis set out in that report, Chair. So any questions, we're grateful to.
Any questions from anyone or comments? Thank you for bringing it to the committee. I'm guessing we don't have to vote on that, as it's just for noting, which I therefore brings us to the end of this meeting today. So thank you very much for attending, your contributions, questions. Enjoy the rest of your day.